If you've ever been underestimated, if someone ever looked at your skin, your age, your clothes and decided you were nothing, then stop scrolling. This story is for you. And before we even begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button because what you're about to hear will shock you, shake you, and remind you that destiny doesn't ask anyone for permission, especially when it belongs to you. When 17-year-old Amara Daniels stepped through the rotating glass doors of Carrington Global Holdings, she looked nothing like someone who was about to change the fate of a billion-dollar empire. She looked like any other quiet black teenager from the south side of the city, oversized hoodie, fraying braids she did herself the night before, a backpack missing a zipper, and a calmness in her eyes that was far too mature for her age, shaped by years of surviving a world determined to overlook her. But what no one in that marble-floored lobby knew, especially not the Millionaire CEO Richard Carrington himself, was that she wasn't there to ask for an internship, wasn't there to sell chocolate bars for a fundraiser, and definitely wasn't there to beg for a scholarship donation. She was there because the company's late founder, Victoria Hale, one of the most powerful women in the country, had left behind a sealed document naming her sole heiress, but nobody knew why, Amara included, and today was the day the board would publicly announce the identity of the mysterious heir, though they expected a polished Ivy League graduate, a wealthy white protege, perhaps a groomed nephew or niece. What they would not, could not, in any universe, imagine, was her. Amara walked past the security guards who barely glanced at her, assuming she was a courier or someone lost, and she kept her gaze forward, her grip tightening around the crumpled letter from Hale's attorney that she had reread more than 70 times since receiving it 2 weeks ago. Be at Carrington Global Holdings headquarters, 9 a.m. sharp. Bring identification. Do not speak to anyone about this beforehand. She didn't understand it. She had never met Victoria Hale, had never shaken hands with her, never stepped into the neighborhoods this woman lived in. Their worlds were different planets, but the letter was real, the signature was verified, the attorney's call was confirmed twice, and the taxi ride she barely afforded that morning had brought her here, nervous, confused, but determined. Inside the boardroom, the oak table gleamed beneath the crystal lights as 12 board members sat stiffly, whispering among themselves about why the CEO had refused to reveal the heir's identity early. Richard Carrington, a smug man in his late 50s with silver hair and the arrogance of someone whose confidence had never been challenged, smoothed his tie and chuckled to himself about this ridiculous secret game Victoria set up before she died, convinced the heir was probably one of his golf buddy's kids. When Amara stepped into the boardroom doorway, he didn't even look at her at first. He actually looked past her, expecting someone else, and when she cleared her throat to speak, he let out a baffled laugh, the kind that dripped with disbelief and insult. Oh, sweetheart, no, 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 the delivery entrance is on the side of the building. The board members snickered, one even waved her off as though shooing away a child. A heat rose in Amara's chest, not anger, not shame, but something sharper, clarity. She stepped forward, placed the attorney's sealed envelope on the table, and said in a voice smooth but unwavering, "I think you should read this before you embarrass yourselves further." Carrington's smirk faltered. One of the board members opened the envelope, scanned the document, froze, then read it. Twice more, his face draining of color. When he finally looked up, he stuttered out, "Richard, this is real." The room fell silent. Amara stood still, expression unreadable, while Carrington snatched the document from the man's hand, muttering, "Impossible, this has to be a joke, this girl can't be," but the signature was unmistakable. Victoria Hale had personally named Amara Daniels as the legal heir to her 57% controlling share of the company, meaning this teenager, this girl he had just mocked, was now the most powerful person in the building. The room exploded into a storm of questions. Who is she? Why her? How could this happen? But Amara ignored them all, gripping her backpack straps with trembling fingers while memories flashed through her mind. Growing up in a foster system that never remembered her name, working after-school shifts to feed herself and her little brother, praying each night for a chance, just one chance, to change her life. Now that chance had arrived, not gently, but like lightning. Richard Carrington slammed his fist on the table, pointing directly at her. "I don't care what this says," he barked. "This company cannot, and will not, be handed over to some random street kid. Victoria must have been manipulated. Or confused. Or something. This is absurd." Amara felt the sting of the words, street kid, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped forward, picking up the document he had thrown across the table, and said, "You can insult me all you want. But the law doesn't care what you think. Something in her tone, calm, quiet, but edged with steel, made the board fall silent. She reached into her pocket and placed the attorney's secondary verification papers on the table. You can call the attorney yourself. You can call the court. You can call the Department of State if you want. The results are the same. This company is mine. Silence. Heavy. Electric. Carrington finally let out a shaky laugh, but this time it wasn't amused, it was fearful. No judge will let this stand, he insisted. I'll contest it. But he already knew he had no standing. Victoria Hale's estate was airtight. Amara lifted her chin. Contest it. I'll still win. She didn't know where that confidence came from, but it felt right, like something rising in her that had been waiting her whole life. Suddenly, one board member, the only black woman in the room, Mrs. Lillian Brewer, spoke up for the first time. Richard, she said evenly, you know Victoria. She didn't do anything without reason. The board exchanged glances. Carrington glared at her. Are you actually suggesting this is legitimate? I'm suggesting, Brewer replied, that Victoria Hale chose her. And we should figure out why, before we make fools of ourselves. But Carrington wasn't listening. His mind was already racing through ways to undermine the girl standing before him. He needed to keep his power. He needed to keep control. And if he couldn't do it legally, he would do it strategically. He smiled a thin smile at Amara. Fine, he said slowly. While we verify these documents, why don't you take a little tour of the building? Meet some staff. See what you're supposedly inheriting. The tone was laced with mockery. But Amara nodded. She didn't trust him, not for a second, but she wasn't afraid. She followed an assistant out the door. The moment it closed behind her, Carrington turned to the board and hissed, she's not walking out of this building with control. I'll dig up everything about her past, everything that can discredit her, everything that makes her look unfit. Mark my words, this isn't over. What Carrington didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that Amara's connection to Victoria Hale ran far deeper than a simple inheritance. There was a reason the billionaire had chosen her, a reason buried under 17 years of secrets, a reason Carrington himself was unknowingly tied to. And before the day was over, someone in that building would try to make sure the truth never came out, even if it meant removing Amara entirely. Amara followed the assistant, Cynthia, a nervous woman with 2 high heels and a clipboard that never left her chest, down the corridor lined with framed newspaper headlines celebrating Carrington Global's achievements, though every headline seemed to praise Richard Carrington, not Victoria Hale, the real founder whose vision had built the empire brick by brick, and as Amara walked past each frame, she felt a strange déjà vu, like she had seen these halls in dreams or nightmares she could never recall clearly, a sense of familiarity that shouldn't exist, but the deeper she went, the stronger it pulled at her ribs, especially when they passed a long-forgotten portrait of Victoria Hale herself, a tall, elegant black woman in her 70s, eyes sharp, posture commanding, a woman who radiated power without saying a word, and when Amara stopped dead in front of the portrait, Cynthia stuttered, "Why you okay?" Because Amara was staring at the painting as though frozen, because Victoria Hale's eyes in the portrait had the same subtle tilt, the same depth of sadness, the same shape as her own eyes, a detail Amara had never noticed in anyone before. She tore her gaze away as Cynthia hurried her toward the lower-level manufacturing floor, explaining processes Amara barely heard because her mind raced with questions, confused memories, and suspicions that were growing heavier with every step. In the boardroom above them, Richard Carrington was pacing intensely, barking orders at his legal team over speakerphone, demanding background checks on Amara, her family, her school, her social media, anything he could weaponize, and every time someone on the call said, "She's clean," or "No criminal history," or "Top grades," he grew more furious. Meanwhile, the only board member who wasn't panicking, Lillian Brewer, was quietly reviewing Victoria Hale's final estate documents again, tracing her fingers over Hale's signature, remembering the day the founder had told her, cryptically, when the time comes, the company will return to its rightful bloodline. Brewer had assumed Hale meant a distant cousin or a hidden nephew, but now, she wasn't sure. Back on the lower floors, Cynthia was giving rushed explanations as factory machines hummed around them, workers glancing at Amara with mild curiosity, unaware they were looking at their soon-to-be boss. One older mechanic, Mr. Hendricks, paused his work and approached her, disheveled grease on his hands, and said, "You lost, kid." But when Amara smiled politely and shook her head, he added, "You remind me of someone who used to walk these floors, Ms. Hale herself. She had eyes that looked right through you, like she knew something you didn't." The comment sent a chill down Amara's spine, but before she could ask what he meant, Cynthia hurried her along because Richard Carrington had just requested Amara be brought to the executive floor for a private discussion, a phrase that made Cynthia swallow nervously, like she knew what kind of discussion Carrington usually had with people he saw as threats. As they reached the executive elevator, a gold-trimmed lift requiring keycard clearance, Cynthia tapped her badge and whispered, "Look, when you go in there, be careful. He doesn't like losing." It was the first genuinely human thing the woman had said. Amara nodded, stepping into the elevator as the doors closed with a metallic sigh, carrying her upward to a confrontation she felt in her bones. The executive floor was silent, cold, almost surgical in its design. The walls were glass, the floors marble, the air expensive. Carrington stood with his back to her, staring out of the floor-to-ceiling windows like a villain rehearsing his monologue. When he finally turned around, his smile was tight, fake, stretched. "Miss Daniels," he said, gesturing to a chair. Amara did not sit. "You wanted to talk," she replied. Carrington clasped his hands behind his back and circled her like a predator. "Let's speak frankly," he said. "You don't belong here. You don't understand this world, this responsibility, this level of power. You're a child. You're an outsider. He caught himself before saying the word that hovered on his tongue, poor. Instead, he forced a more polished insult, underprepared. Amara met his gaze with calm defiance. Victoria Hale didn't think so. His expression twitched. "Victoria Hale made an error in judgment," he snapped. "And I intend to correct it. Legally or otherwise." The last word hung in the air like poison. Amara felt her pulse quicken, but she held her ground. "You can't threaten me," she said. "You know that, right?" Carrington smirked. "Oh, I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you. There's a difference." He leaned close enough that she could smell the bitterness in his breath. "Walk away. Renounce the inheritance. Take a payout, say, $20,000. That's life-changing for someone like you." The condescension in his voice was staggering. Amara didn't blink. "No." Carrington straightened sharply. "Think carefully, Miss Daniels. People like you don't get opportunities like this. And they don't survive in places like this." Amara's voice dropped to a whisper of steel. "Watch me." Before Carrington could respond, the office door burst open and Lillian Brewer entered, face grim. "Richard, we have a problem," she said. "The Federal Estate Registry just confirmed the documents. The inheritance is already transferring legally." For the first time, Amara watched Carrington's power slip visibly from his face like water draining from a cracked glass. "That's impossible," he muttered. Brewer shot Amara a complicated look, part respect, part fear, part something else, before turning back to Carrington. "There's more. The court has scheduled an immediate formal acknowledgement hearing. Today. In 2 hours." Carrington closed his eyes in rage. Brewer took a breath, then added, "And Richard, the press already got word." Amara's heart skipped. "The press. Already." Brewer nodded at her. "They're outside the building right now. Cameras. Reporters. The public announcement is happening whether you want it or not." Carrington felt the walls closing in. He slammed his fist on the desk. "This is ridiculous. Someone leaked it to sabotage me. Who did it?" Brewer did not flinch. "Victoria Hale planned this." She turned to Amara. "And she planned for you to be prepared for it. There's a room on the 12th floor she wanted you to see. I'll take you there." Amara followed Brewer down a separate corridor, away from Carrington's furious shouts. As they walked, Brewer said softly, "Amara, Victoria didn't choose you randomly. She spent years searching. Years making sure the heir was the right person." Amara frowned. "But why me?" Brewer hesitated, then said, "Because of your mother." Amara stopped walking. "My mother. I never knew her." Brewer's face softened with sadness. "Victoria did." The hallway seemed to tilt. "What do you mean?" Amara whispered. Brewer inhaled slowly. "Your mother, Naomi Daniels, was once Victoria Hale's closest protege. Brilliant. Loyal. Loved. Victoria saw her as the daughter she never had." Amara felt her breath lodge in her throat. "Then, what happened?" Brewer looked away. "Your mother vanished when you were a baby. No trace. No explanation. Victoria spent years searching. She blamed herself for Naomi's disappearance." A tremor moved through Amara's chest. "So she chose me because she felt guilty." Brewer shook her head. "No. She chose you because she believed you were meant to finish what Naomi started." They reached the 12th floor, a sealed archival level not open to employees. Brewer unlocked a heavy door and guided Amara inside a dim room lined with old files, personal belongings, photographs, and sealed boxes marked with Victoria Hale's initials. She handed Amara a thick folder labeled, Naomi Daniels, Confidential. Amara opened it with trembling fingers, and inside were dozens of photos of her mother, smiling brightly beside Victoria Hale, standing proudly inside boardrooms, holding Amara as a baby. There were handwritten notes describing Naomi's brilliance, Naomi's vision, Naomi's potential, and then abruptly, pages stained with watermarks, notes reading, Naomi missing, no leads, suspect internal sabotage, and one final entry, protect Naomi's child at all costs. Find her. Prepare her. She will inherit everything. Amara's knees weakened. Brewer steadied her. Victoria never stopped searching for you. She made sure your foster placements were monitored quietly. She made sure you had opportunities, even small ones, placed near you. She made sure you survived. Before Amara could speak, the building alarms blared, sharp, shrill, echoing through the halls. Brewer stiffened. That's not a fire alarm, she said. That's a breach alarm. Security issue. Footsteps thundered down the corridor outside. Voices shouted. Amara felt the floor vibrate. Brewer hurried to the door, peeking out, and her face went pale. He didn't, she whispered. Amara grabbed her arm. Who? What happened? Brewer's voice trembled. Carrington, he ordered private security to detain you. He's trying to remove you from the building before the press gets access to you. Amara's heart pounded. Detain me. Why? Because once the cameras show your face, Brewer said, the world will know the truth. And he can't stop it anymore. The footsteps grew louder, aggressive, rushing, hunting. Brewer slammed the archive room door shut and locked it. We don't have much time. There's a maintenance exit on the other side. It leads to the roof. A helicopter is already circling for the press broadcast. What? Amara gasped. Brewer nodded hurriedly. Victoria arranged it long ago. If anything went wrong, the air would be airlifted out for public protection. It's all in her safety protocol. They hurried through the archives to a hidden panel Brewer revealed behind stacked boxes. She shoved it open, revealing a narrow stairwell. But just as they stepped inside, heavy fists banged on the archive door behind them, men shouting, Open up. Security. We need to escort the girl. Brewer pushed Amara into the stairwell. Go. Now. Amara shook her head. I'm not leaving you. But Brewer forced her upward. You have no choice, this company belongs to you, and they know it. If they catch you before the press does, you disappear, same as your mother. The words slammed into Amara like a punch. What do you mean, same as my mother? Brewer looked up at her with regret thick in her eyes. Your mother didn't vanish, Amara. She was taken. The pounding at the door grew violent, metal bending. Brewer shouted, Go. And as Amara climbed toward the roof, the truth clawed at her chest. Her mother hadn't run, she had been silenced. And now, they were trying to silence her too. Amara burst onto the rooftop, the cold wind whipping her hair as the helicopter hovered, cameras flashing, live streams already capturing the moment, and behind her, Carrington's security finally burst through the stairwell door, shouting and firing. Warning shots that barely grazed her as she ran, her heart pounding like a drum of destiny, and then Lillian Brewer appeared beside her, holding a keycard and shouting, Jump. Victoria prepared this escape route years ago. With no time to hesitate, Amara leapt into the helicopter just as Carrington reached the roof's edge, arms outstretched in furious disbelief, his empire crumbling in front of the world's eyes. Inside, the pilot soared over the city as Amara clutched the folder containing her mother's history, her inheritance documents, and Hale's final notes, realizing that she wasn't just taking control of a company, she was reclaiming a family legacy, confronting a past she never knew, and stepping into a future she alone had the courage to lead. While the world watched live as the headline flashed across every newsfeed, Teen Black Heiress takes control of billion-dollar empire, Carrington outmaneuvered. Tears of triumph and grief mingled on Amara's face as she looked down at the sprawling city, feeling the weight of her mother's sacrifice, the brilliance of Victoria Hale's foresight, and the undeniable truth. She was no longer underestimated, no longer invisible, and from this day forward, she would write her own story, one that the world could never ignore.